welcome back. We're going to do what we're going to call a quick WN boot camp video. My next video on the Atlantic Wall is going to be the German fire segment. So I created this little diagram. Now, in all fairness, this gentleman named Paul, and I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher your last name, McGillivray, he did a really good one. It's on the Facebook group, but you can also go to Monster on My Table, I believe. I believe that's him. I could be wrong, but Monster on My Table. And he has a really nice video. We'll kill that. So anyway, if you go there, and I'll just show you some sneak peeks, he has some really nice diagrams with the actual pieces. And I don't have the patience to take all these stills and put all these graphics. He does a great job of going through everything. I'd highly recommend watching that when you're done with mine, or if you prefer his style, that's fine. Again, it's not all about look at my stuff. I mean, of course, I want you to watch my channel because I put a lot of time and energy into it, but I want to grow the hobby just like Paul and all these other guys want to do. So whatever works for you, do it. But anyway, here's my simplified version, maybe a little more kindergarten version, but I think it'll get the job done. And I'm not going to get into a bunch of weird situations. To me, they're fairly explanatory if you follow the rule. Just don't overthink it. Okay, so we're not going to cover anti-tank guns, and we're not going to cover infantry. We're just going to cover the fire lanes for the WNs and how it works with nobody directly below them and a unit directly below them, because that's the two factors that make the big difference. Okay, so first things first, if you are in the beach exit box row, that's this row across the top, all right, you can only ever fire into that row. Okay, I don't know how to use these controls for this zooming on this picture. So this represents a little bigger area than this does down here. So this WN67 cannot fire into this beach exit box or this one, and he cannot fire into St. Laurent 2 or St. Laurent 3. Okay, he just can't fire into there. He can only fire into here. Okay, now every WN can fire into its own area, and that would be at a ×2. Okay, so if somebody's in your hex, you can fire at them. The other restriction is, I'm sorry if I call them hexes, it's actually a space, but we're just going to call them hexes because I'm so used to hexes. If you have a guy in your hex that you're firing at ×2, you cannot fire anywhere else because you're a little tied up with being overrun. Okay, so just remember that simple rule. If anyone is in a space with a WN, he can only fire at those guys. All right. The next rule to think about is if you're in the coastal defense box, you cannot fire to your sides. All right, so this guy cannot fire over here to help WN72, and you cannot fire up to a higher level than you. So even these guys can't fire down. These guys cannot fire up or to their sides. Okay, but they are going to fire down. And the difference with that is if you're in the pavilion box, which is right here, then you can fire to your sides. Okay, so if there's a pavilion box, which I want to say the only one that has the pavilion box is Omaha. I don't think any of the UK ones. I guess I never paid that close attention. But you can fire to your side in the pavilion box, and we'll get into how that works. So let's say this is the wave coming in, and it's your turn to fire. It would never look like that, but we're just trying to keep it simplified, okay? And I was doing ×1 in yellow, but then when I was putting it on the pavilion box here, it was like, okay, you can't really see that, and I'm not going to redo all that because I was using paint. So once you put the graphic there, it's stuck. You can't, and the only way to just undo everything. So let's get into that. So here's the two scenarios. So Windenständer Nesten, I think is what they're called. They fire, down into their sector, and any subsectors alongside them they can fire into. Okay, so let's say we're going to fire for WN65 on this turn. Okay, there's no unit directly below them, so they have unrestricted fire into their adjacent subsectors. Okay, so if we were going to look at WN65's firepower, he could fire to his sides for ×2, right? He could fire directly in front of him for ×2, which you can always do. So if you're sitting here and there's guys here, unless they're in the same space as you are, but if you can fire ×2 here, and then you can fire out one adjacent subsector. So they could fire ×2 into here, ×2 into here, and then you go to the next lane. He can fire 2 directly in front of him, and then these out here are a little weaker, so they're ×1. And what you take this ×2 and ×1 is by the number of steps. So this guy firing by himself, if he was firing here, would be a 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. Okay? So that's how it works if there's nobody directly below you. If there's somebody directly below you, like this armor unit coming up on 68 North, it changes the game a little bit. You get restricted on the adjacent subsectors, but you still get to fire into your main areas, but you're going to have a little bit of less value because you're dealing with a threat right to your front. So again, nobody's in this area with him, so he can fire directly to his south, directly below him, ×2. Okay? Now, he's dealing with this guy, so he's focusing all the dudes in these nests, and this doesn't necessarily represent one of those big things you see in Saving Private Ryan, right? It's going to be like those Tobrucks and machine gun nests and mortars and stuff like that, right? So it could represent those, but I don't know enough of the history to tell you which ones were big monster ones and which ones weren't, okay? So this is representing they're dealing with this threat right to the front of them. It's ×2, and then since they have someone right in front of them, that drops this now to ×1. So it'd fire with a strength of 2 here and a strength of 1 here. Unfortunately, because this threat is here, they only fire at strength 1 to help out over here and strength 1 over here, and they're also restricted to strength 1 into this immediate subsector box adjacent to it, and this one here, and they are too focused on what's going on, so they don't get to fire with the red arrows into this box or this box, if that makes sense to you, okay? And if you got any questions, feel free to post them in there. Again, otherwise, Monster on My Table, that's one of the better ones I've seen. I really like it. I watched it before I started my my beach stuff to make sure I was doing it right, because I'm a very visual person. He did a great job. I don't have the patience to sit and do that. So hats off to him. For the most part, that's about it. Now I'll talk a little bit about how the fire works without all this stuff. I'm going to leave it on there, but here's how it works. The max firepower you can fire into one box, okay, is 7 firepower. So even if it's more. So let's pretend that, so what you usually do is you'd start here and you'd go across and fire at each box, see what the firepower is from left to right. Then you move up to the next box and you fire left to right across here. Then you'd go up to the pavilion box. This is the shingle. This is the beach. Okay, this is where they're going to come in. If you've watched the first video, you can see this is where they're basically lining up with the beach and they're trying to get past the obstacles and whatnot. And then this is the beach, so they're going to have to move a little bit up there, and it's going to depend on if it's low, medium, or high. This is the shingle box. If they can get to here, they get some protection. Then they have to breach the seawall so they can get guys, so these guys can get off over the seawall and get to here with these bluffs, and then they got to breach it twice. Oh, I'm so used to that being the game, but this is just an image. Before armor and vehicles can get off the beach. So there's a lot of work to get off the beach. But let's just say that we're at this box right here for firing. So what we would do is add up all the WNs that can fire there, okay? Now, he can't, right, because he's in the beach exit box. Now, this is unique with Omaha, and this is why Omaha is so deadly, is if you notice here, this is one, I think they call it a sector, okay? But you notice there's a WN that borderlines the sector here and a WN that borderlines it here. So you have this one at strength 2 and this one at strength 1 that can both fire this way. And if there's nobody directly below them, so nobody in this pavilion box, they're going to be able to fire out to this at what? ×2, because there's nobody in the way. Then this guy is the same thing, right? He could fire here, here, but you only focus on the box you're firing at. So what you do is see who can all fire him. So he can, He will, and that'll be times 2. He does not, because he only fires at armored vehicles. Okay. This guy right here, okay, normally could because he could fire here, here, and here, but he's got this little engineer threatening him. So guess what? He can fire here at times 2, here at times 1, here at times 1, and then remember, when you get out here, so if you got a guy directly in front of you, you can't go 2 sections. So he goes to here, and that's it. So he doesn't get to get used. Now, this guy here borders Fox green, right? You don't count this little draw. So easy red 2, he's a 1, nobody directly in front of him. So he can fire all the way down at, and I didn't do a guy up here. Maybe should have done one guy up here so you could see. The same rules apply to these as do to these. You just can't fire to your left and right with the guys in the coastal defense box. So he's going to contribute 2. He's going to contribute 2. He's going to contribute 2. And the guy up there with 2 is going to contribute 4. So that gives us 10, right? You got 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all times 2. That gives you 10 firepower. And I'll show you when I do the turn, you max it out at 7. If you hit 7, you don't have to keep counting. So that'll actually speed some things up. But let's go ahead and look at one if we were going to fire with some guys in the way. Let's pretend we're firing at this box right here. Okay, so this will be a little bit interesting. So first I always kind of start with the row down below, right? So who's adjacent to easy red 2? Well, easy red 1 is, because he borders it right here with this. Even though there's this little split here, he still borders this whole sector, this whole subsector here, right? So does WN61. He doesn't have to be by it. He just has to be in this sector right here, and he borderline touches it. Obviously, this guy fires down into it, right? This guy fires down into it. This guy fires down into it. He's adjacent. This guy right here, he's adjacent to it, so he will fire down into there. And this guy, all right? So obviously, we're going to have a ton of firepower. And this is where Omaha is so nasty in the beginning, is because you're maxing out a lot of 7 firepower, where on Utah Beach, I think the worst you get is if you go to the, you'd actually have to go here to the actual, that's the strongest WN. Then there's a blank space and then a WN with 1, a blank space and a WN with 1. So if you land in the actual landing spots, the most you're going to have to probably deal with is a 4 and more than likely a 3. So this is why Omaha is so deadly. Let's see if we can find a different example. Well, let's do this one right here and pretend we're firing this way because there isn't as many and we can actually do the math. Because here we know there's a zillion, right? So now this guy is in front, so he's going to limit some of the firepower, but he's not going to, well, and these won't all count, so let's run through that just to make sure. So if you look at this guy, all right, he's got nobody in front of him, so he fires down here at full strength at 2. I'm sorry, 1. Okay, because nobody's in front of him. So boom, 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 1. You'd hit here for 2, but we're going to do this one right here. Okay. So he fires this way for 2. This guy would fire here for 2, but because he has a threat, it's only a 1 to here. So now we're at 3. This guy's the same thing. We already actually have him marked. It's a 2 and then a 1 to here. So now we're at 4. This guy right here can fire straight down. Now this is where you just have to follow the rule. Don't overthink it. No, he's not directly below him. He'd have to be right here to be directly below him, right? So he's not directly below him. So this guy would fire here 2, and then it would be 2, 2, right? Because if nobody's directly below you, you fire the whole distance. The reason I didn't mark down here is you don't ever fire into the C box, okay? So now that's 4 more. So now we're already at 8, right? This guy would do the same thing. He's not directly below him, so that's why it's important to get guys up into here to start taking up these guys' fire, and even better, get in there with them. So he would fire another 2. So we're actually up to like 12 already, and that's not even figuring out this guy. So let's go look at a different one that's not as deadly. Let's say we're firing at this square. And remember, and I'll go through this, I'll do a whole landing. I'll probably do I haven't decided if I'll do the Omaha Beach ones because it takes a while, but I'll do enough in the video. I just wanted to cover the basics. You guys aren't like, wait, why is that? Why is that? Why? And I don't want to repeat it every time. It'll take forever. But let's pretend we're firing at this. So remember, you start at the left, we'd be going down here, and we'd say, okay, so we fired through all these. Okay, here's the next one we got to do. So what do we fire? Okay, well, this guy fires here, but we know he's a 1 because he's our example because he's got an enemy in front of him. So that's 1 firepower. Then you got WN68 right up here, but he has no enemy directly below him. So he gets times 2, and he can fire out unrestricted. So now we're at 3 firing to here. All right. And then same with this guy. He's got nobody directly below him. So what does that mean? 2, and then so he would fire 2 to here and 1 to here, right? Because even though it's not restricted, you're still firing out kind of on your flank, right? You only ever get this 2 times right directly in front of you, and then the first boxes are right here. So that ends up being 1. So now we're at a 4, and this guy will be the same rule. He's got 1 star. So it'd be a 2 to here and a 1 and a 1 out to here. So that puts us at 5. So here we'd only have 5 firepower, okay? But that's still pretty nasty. Excuse me. This WN is really nasty with 3. So you can see, like, if nobody's up to him yet, just by himself, he's going to already be at a 6. It's not going to take very hard for him to get to a 7. So anyway, that's just kind of a quick overview on how WNs work. Again, there's probably other videos out there. I would imagine Tabletop's Edge is probably going to do something with it. I don't know if he'll go through all the details. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's actually playing through the whole game, I believe. So I always like watching his videos. I don't have the space, and I like to jump from game to game, so I don't usually set up the actual game. I do own the games I'm playing on here, but I like to jump back and forth, and I might play Atlantic Wall for another 2-3 months, and then I'm going to jump back to Walk Them Ride, or maybe I jump over and do Lobosits or something and start doing some Black Powder or some Gettysburg game, right? So anywho, that's it. If you got any questions, give me a holler. You can leave comments below. Remember, if you want to support the channel, use any of the links. And remember to support the other channels out there as far as talking to them and uh, looking at their videos and stuff, because a lot of these guys put a ton of work into these and they're good stuff. So thanks for joining me, and fire away if you got any questions.